Welcome everybody to another episode of the show, because obviously I'm kind of at this point getting sick and tired of trying to say haunted Vermont, because every time I say haunted Vermont it goes into beyond. Sometimes when it goes beyond it stays beyond, and yeah. So anyway, welcome to the show everybody. Welcome back finally, Ronald. This is your first time even on video with me, so it's a pleasure.
That's right. Hey, it is a pleasure to be here, Paul. I always look forward to our discussions, and like I said, one of my favorite shows to be on.
Well, I don't know if I would say that, but I mean, there's tons of shows in a sea of podcasts, man. I'm just nobody.
But you know what? You have been rising above the rest of them there, and I think that at the end of any of your podcasts, somebody learns something, and that's important in this field. You know, it's great to talk about the paranormal and the supernatural and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, if you don't learn anything, then what was the use of sitting in on it?
Yeah, that's true. I think that's why, a lot of people are starting to maybe unfollow me now, because I've noticed a lot of numbers of mine are dropping, and it's probably because I'm getting older, and I'm getting to be that guy where I don't know if I want to say I'm the one that's yelling people get off my lawn per se, right. But yeah. I could feel a shift in me when it comes to talking, especially in this field, right? Because I've been doing this, well, not as long as you, but would just say respectfully for the haunted Vermont thing, almost 14 years now.
No, that's a long time.
But even before doing this haunted Vermont thing, I had strange stuff going on, but I wasn't fully into it. I was, but I wasn't into it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's fair to say. But anyway, so what I'm trying to get at is I think it's because I'm starting to call out certain people, because it's just well, it's nice that you're trying to do this, but where's your evidence to back it up?
Mm-hmm.
And then it's I'm trying to find it to prove the existence of where this possibly came from,
right.
Which maybe might be another chat, but I mean it's just interesting what I've been diving into lately. Maybe I'll say that for the next chat for us, Ronald, because pretty soon it'll be National Sea Serpent Day, or International. I forget how it is nowadays. But speaking of national holidays, or per se, here we're going to be talking about for International Faery Day.
Right.
So I never, in all my years, I never thought I'd be talking about fairies, but it's getting to the point where fairies can be almost anything. Mm-hmm. And speaking of which, before I go on any further, people do not know you yet on the show. Well, let's quickly just say this. Ronald's been on before to talk about Lights in the Mist. Here's the actual book cover for people watching the video. And what else have you been on? You've been on National Werewolf Day. So here's another book that you have done. You're on Dogman. I think you mentioned it before. And now that we're talking about fairies, and too bad she's no longer alive, but this comes into play too. But we got Rosemary Goey, and she's got me into a lot of things, because she's an author of, I think she ended up publishing, I should say, 65 books. She was doing everything from paranormal, the occult, and what am I forgetting? Spirituality.
Yep.
And stuff like that. But what's cool with you, Ron, is your book, which is called On Fairies, Historical Survey, which we'll kind of get into. But you had the last forward by Rosemary Goey.
It was, yes. She was going to actually publish that under her company before she passed away, which is extremely unfortunate, because in the field of the paranormal, number one, there's not a lot of women doing this, and there needs to be. This has become a man's club for far too long. We definitely need more women as researchers out here. And she was definitely one of the best. And I met her, and we became friends. And she was very pivotal in setting my direction to go in the exploration of the fairy realm. And like I said, it was an honor that she wrote the foreword of the book. I just wish she was able to publish it too, because that would have been a great, like I said, a great honor to me, because I really did admire her, not only as a human being, and she was a very kind human being, but also as a researcher.
Oh yeah, I loved her work.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, you know what? I know I just showed it by that, but yeah, I mean, here's your book, here's hers. So I mean,
Right, right.
but
Yes.
I have something else of hers too. What is it? The Encyclopedia of Spirit or something?
Oh yeah. So I think that at the end she had somewhere about 300 publications with her name attached to it somehow, whether it was dictionaries or encyclopedias or what have you. She was very prolific in this field, and rightfully so. But like I said, we lost a really great researcher and a really great person here. But yeah, I think that the book that you have there is one of the essential ones that everybody should have on their bookshelf. Not My Lights in the Mist, although that would be great, but definitely you should have something from Mary Ellen Guiley in your bookshelf if you're going to be an investigator.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I remember seeing this great big like book for her Encyclopedia of Spirits, and I'm just like, yeah, this is mine because it was like at a thrift shop for like $5
Uh-huh.
or something. So that's and
Yep.
that and her stuff is not cheap. That's for
No,
sure.
it's not.
So
That's exactly right. Yeah, and that's the other thing too. It's odd that you mentioned that because some of my greatest finds have been in thrift shops. You go to the back and you love the smell of those old books. That's the reason I still to this day can't use electronic books, ebooks. I just don't have any time for them because I want to feel the weight of the book and smell the ages that have been through those pages. So I love to go to the very back of these bookstores, very dimly lit, and you search around for these treasures. And every now and then you can find something that, you didn't maybe not even knew about, or, one of those great time life encyclopedias of the supernatural, which I was able to find. And it becomes, the crown of your collection. And so I urge everyone to go out there and support their local used bookstore.
yeah, I totally agree with that because speaking of treasures, there's a bookstore from here, like probably 45, 50 minutes away. They're called Monroe Street Book. They probably have like over tens of thousands of books, man, like from top to bottom. Like you need a ladder sometimes to get to the very top. So that's how old school we're talking about. And what's funny is like back when I used to read Anne Rice's, written book, they would have her work. And there's been a couple times where I just go in there and I pick out like an Anne Rice book and it's signed by Anne Rice. And of course,
No, right.
I'm like, of course, I'm that guy that goes, I need to look up this to make sure this is actually her signature,
I
because
do know.
because people do forge names out there just to say that it's signed. But yeah, it's a sad world sometimes. But anyway, yeah, I've been lucky to even find that. And I mean, she's another author that I love that passed away. And it's just like, well, now I'm almost done with like her Vampire Chronicles, and it's like I don't know what I want to do now. Like I'm hesitating because I'm like 2 books away from finishing her Vampire Chronicles.
No, right. And then whenever you're done, right? Where do you turn to next?
Well, I got other books of her that I can do, but it's not the Vampire Chronicles. Maybe I could just start over. But yeah,
Very
um,
cool.
yeah, it is very cool. So anyway, Ron, this is perfect. So I had Andrew Warburton on, and we talked for a little bit about fairies. This is perfect too because in your book that we kind of mentioned, the On Fairies, the historical survey, I noticed that you actually used an E where there's sometimes an I. So I wanted to ask you, is that like because of the older European spelling?
Yeah, very good. So I actually explained this in the foreword. That's me being pretentious. Absolutely.
Okay.
That's the older spelling. That's the medieval spelling that you would have. And I think that by using that spelling, we're trying to get more to the source of what the Fae actually represents rather than the Tinkerbell that Disney has put out, right? We are really trying to get to the source because I look at myself as a paranormal archaeologist, that you have to dig through a lot of layers in the past to really get to the source of that thing that you're looking for. And it required a lot of digging. And unlike other things, such as the wild man or vampires or werewolves, fairies go even beyond the lowest level in humanity. I mean, they've been there forever, you know. And so, even before we were human beings, I suggest that we still believed in a world that was inhabited by intelligence. And that's what brings us here to this day, right? We're talking about this idea. And what also happens in the Middle Ages and in the Renaissance is fairies are now becoming something that we can at least negotiate with, because now they are called elementals, right? They are part of the world itself. They not only represent the elements, but they are the actual active intelligences within the world itself. So we think of the air, we think of the water, you know, the ether, fire, earth. You know, we think of all those great classic pediments upon which we build our world around it. And each of those particular layers, each of those elements has a fairy attached to it. And I think that whenever we look at alchemy, especially, in order to, and alchemy, you know, that sounds like something that is, you know, antiquated, and for the most part it is. But alchemy was our first attempt at chemistry. It was our first attempt at physics. It was our first attempt at mathematically quantifying the world around us. And these great alchemists, in order to do that, you know, like Paracelsus is one of the most famous of the alchemists. As he was trying to pursue, you know, the knowledge that was, you know, occult at the time, this hidden knowledge, you know, he came upon mineralogy, which we still have to this day. So if you ever take zinc or a zinc supplement, or if you look on your vitamins and you see zinc in there, Paracelsus named that particular mineral because he thought that the minerals, like the world around us, could and help us in many ways, cure a lot of diseases. So he was very much a forerunner. But not only did he name the word zinc, the mineral zinc, he also gave the word gnome its name. So we talk about the fairies that inhabited the earth. You know, the gnome often comes to mind, and that is also Paracelsus. So we see this blending of superstition, the supernatural, and actual science coming together. And that is one of the reasons why I'm so fascinated by the world of the fairy, is because unlike Bigfoot and these other marginalized types of cryptids or unknown beings or entities or what have you, you know, even in the 1800s, we had people like Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, who wrote Sherlock Holmes. He was investigating the world of the Fae, and he believed that fairies existed. So did Harry Houdini. So these great thinkers, these great minds, believed that the world around them was inhabited by entities that exist in our reality, but they live right underneath our reality. So it's kind of like a commingling of different entities. And I think that when we look at the world that way, a lot of things make sense. Now, the person that wrote The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, you know, the Chronicles of Narnia, C.S. Lewis, he maintains that whenever he was younger, he stayed at a house that was haunted by ghosts, and it was infested by fairies as well, too. And he maintains that fairies were far worse than the ghosts. So we have these people that influence us even to this day in what we read and literature and everything else, who believed in fairies. You know, this was just something that happened out there. And, you know, before we came on the show, we talked a little bit about vampires. And Bram Stoker, you know, who was from Ireland, whenever we think of Dracula, we often think of this Eastern European count, and rightfully so, because he did draw upon Vlad the Impaler for his subject matter in his, you know, his phenomenal work of Dracula. But
yeah, the original Dracula.
Yep, exactly. But we are missing out on a couple things. And one of the things is that he was he was obsessed with Irish folklore and Irish mythology. And in Irish folklore and Irish mythology, you have a fairy creature out there, which is called the Dracula, which is insane if you think about this. And these are fairies that had a castle in the middle of the moorlands, right out in the middle of nowhere. And it was kind of like a warning for travelers to beware. You don't want to be caught out on the road at night. You want to be someplace safe, because these creatures were out there. And if they fell upon you, if they discovered you out there, they would attack you and they would drain your blood, because they feasted upon blood. So we see even that Celtic connection to not only the vampire mythos, but also to see how prevalent fairies are in so many different, legends and lores. And in Scotland, we have the Grey Man. And whenever I was in college, I actually had the pleasure of going and doing an expedition for the Grey Man up in the Scottish Highlands. And there, it's often seen as a Bigfoot creature, but it is it being corporeal is tenuous at best. It sometimes takes the shape of a fog and just kind of disappears, or it can become this very large, giant bipedal creature that people think is a Scottish Bigfoot. And whenever I start looking even deeper into Bigfoot legends, not only in North America among the native, the First Nations folks, but also around the world, when we look at Tibet and the Himalayas and Nepal and all these areas, we see that their Yeti and then the Bigfoot of the Pacific Northwest have many connotations with the fairy as well too. They're magical. They straddle the line between the mundane and the miraculous. And even sometimes, if you eat their food, which is, hallmark of fairy culture, if you eat their food, then you become in a part of that world, right? You're now assumed into that world. And you do find that, especially in the Pacific Northwest, when we're talking about Bigfoot legends. And you also see that, like I said, within the Yeti culture as well, too. In the East, in the Yeti culture, the Yeti is almost deified. It's almost worshipped as a god, because it's far more spiritual than it is a physical, brutish animal.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you just said a lot of things that I want to touch on, Ron. And that is, well, for one, when you were talking about certain people that were touching on this, I also want to mention, we also, for Vermont wise, we had Sir Arthur Dolly come here, who were trying to find like the Vermont fairy war and stuff here, but he unfortunately could not have that happen. But I mean, we still got something out of it anyway, sort of. We had him come visit, but another interesting mention, I guess we could kind of go into as a rabbit hole, or just our own take of, when we were little to how we become older and more mature to understanding the whole dark humor thing. Is you mentioned Disney Tinkerbell. Well, back in the day, if like when we were probably watching it, we would think what was going on in that story was the kids are trying to be saved by these Tinkerbells. When in reality, if we look at it now, is it actually the other way around? Like maybe Captain Hook was really trying to save the children from the fairy and Peter Pan.
Right. So there's this whole undercurrent that a lot of people don't like to discuss, but it's been proposed that the Lost Boys are actually dead, right? That Peter Pan is a ghost, and then these are, well, what makes this so incredibly relevant to fairy lore is people who have claimed to have went into the other world, the realm of the fairy, have claimed that they have encountered deceased people over there, as if the other world is kind of a all-encompassing basin for, the supernatural. This is where souls go. This is where supernatural entities go. It's that world that goes on beyond our world, we simply cannot comprehend it. So people who have been taken, whether they were in fairy rings or ate fairy food or whatever, those people who claim that they have visited the world of the fairy have seen people who are deceased within that realm as well. So when we think about the Tinkerbell, then it does make sense at that point that the world of Peter Pan is that other world, that lost world where children are pulled into it, and where fairies are more of the antagonist than some sort of hero, right? And Peter Pan then is much more insidious than just a boy that will never grow up. And the reason why he can't grow up is because he's deceased and he's just a ghost of a child, and he's trying to bring the living over into his world, which is it's a horror story at that point. It's not a children's story. It becomes a very gothic horror novel.
Yeah, and then another show that I can recommend too for people is, for the example of Peter Pan again, is the I'll just say Disney TV show that they did for Alien Earth. They kind of used Peter Pan in that for the Wasp Boys and that, which I thought was ironic.
Yes,
to be called them, but they showed them Peter Pan while they were trying to start a whole new life per se. Which, would that actually really them, or would that just whatever you want to call it, like computerized, I guess, like the synthetic aspect of it, the programmed of the memory, basically. And we can also look at, so would that foreshadowing what we just talked about?
That's right. Yeah, because that is what it's all about, isn't it? So we as human beings, we like to make sense of things. Even if we can't understand it, we still like to compartmentalize it and make sense of things. So even if we don't get it completely right, it's still easier to confront our fears and our desires if we personify them in some way, if we can somehow make them as human as possible. And that's what we do. We make that stuff, which is very frightening to us, into people. We put the mask of the vampire on a person, or the mask of a werewolf on a person, because then we can sometimes deal with it. Because thinking that human beings are monstrous is a very difficult pill to swallow. I don't want to think that at any moment my neighbor can snap and come on over here and kill me, right? And you have people out there that will cannibalize people. Like, we don't want to think that happens. So we then make the people that are doing these things monsters. And in so doing, we create a world that is a little bit more livable. To think that, people can't do such thing. There has to be something monstrous. But if you look at things like World War I or World War II, or anytime people come together in some sort of hateful skirmish, we can see the evil that people are capable of doing. And like I said, we don't want to admit that. So we see them as monsters. We see them as the other. But it's that world of the fairy, that kind of ambiguous world that we really cannot tell what's going on. And even in the Middle Ages, people realize this as well, too. So they try to make some sort of sense of it, because fairies were of a nature that you really could not figure out. Sometimes, well, okay, let's look at it this way. If fairies, for the most part, are, whether they are existing entities or not, they are a personification of the natural world. Even the alchemists did that, right? So you have a mermaid that represents the waters. You have the sylph that represents the air. The gnome represents the earth. The salamander represents fire. And I'm sure I'm missing something else someplace there. But
the dragon, maybe, right?
Well, sure, you have dragons, and that would go over into Oriental mythologies and things like that. But you have all these kind of things because it's easier to deal with. You can personify them, and then you can deal with them. But at the end of the day, these are all elements of the natural world that is personified. And if you look at nature, nature can give, in bounties. You plant a garden, farmers know this kind of stuff. And then nature can also just as quickly take away. So you have droughts and you have all this kind of stuff. So fairies are in that world where they can be beneficial and terribly malicious as well too, just like the world around us.
Oh yeah. So again, a lot of things that you just said. So let's see where to begin real quick. First off, I don't know why, but when you were talking about people, your neighbor coming over to kill me or whatever, oh my God. So I can't make this up. So anyway, back in, I think it was 2005 or something, or maybe even earlier than that, a friend of mine who no longer is on this plane or on this realm, I should say, but he once told me that he had a neighbor from where he was, and this is like northern Vermont area. I'll just say, I'm not going to say the town, but he had a neighbor that got so fed up with his neighbor that he literally went over and shot him, and then just went back to the porch and just sat down waiting for the cops like nothing happened.
Things happen. I mean, people can be strange, parts of this world. Like, we're, as Shakespeare would describe people, we're made little less than angels. And with our intellect and our artistic expression and all that kind of stuff, we truly are. We are a miraculous invention. But on the flip side of that as well, too, we can be demons incarnate as well. We are capable of doing, anything. So I guess that's what we projected onto the world of the fairy. And, like I said, in the Middle Ages, to try to make sense of this, fairies were even categorized. You had the dark fairies and you had the fairies of light. You had something called, in the Renaissance, you had something called the Seelie Court and the Unseelie Court. And the Seelie Court was the fairies of light. You could, in a way, interact with them, but don't piss them off because they can be vicious if you do. And then you have the Unseelie Court, which is the dark fairies, the dusky fairies, where you just leave them completely alone because there's really no good in them whatsoever. Is
that like the Changeling?
Yes. Oh, well, the Changeling. So the Changeling is an interesting idea that I've explored from an anthropological point of view as well, too. So one of the fears, this is the time before genetic testing or anything like that. But one of the fears is that, you would go out or you would go to sleep at night and a fairy would come into your house and take your child and replace it with one of their children, right? And fairy children didn't adapt very well to our world. They were rather sickly at times. They ate a lot of food. It just wasn't a good thing to have a fairy child within your home. So that was a big fear of a lot of people, the idea of the changeling. But where did that come from? So one of the theories is, and we're going back to the time whenever there are invasions, whether it's the invasions of the Romans into England, or we have the Viking invasions, or we have, Celtic invasions, whatever. It's the cultural remembrance of people coming in and usurping your world, right? So you can imagine that somebody comes in with a different culture, a different religion, and they displace you and they throw you out of your world and they take over what once was yours, right? And in this new world where the inhabitants used to reign, now they are set up in the periphery, right? Now they're part of this liminal world and they don't have crops, they don't have access to hunting, and they have children. So one of the theories in anthropology is that these displaced people, in hopes that their child would have a chance of living, would sneak into these colonies at night and place their child in the crib and sometimes take the other child as well too. So we have this folk memory, part of our collective unconscious, that children sometimes can go missing inexplicably and can be replaced with something that is foreign to that family. So from a completely academic, anthropological point of view, sociology, it makes sense if that was going to happen. But it happened for such a long period of time that it becomes archetypal, that it transcends time and space, and it becomes a part of our memory. To the point in the 1800s, if you can believe it. So we're talking about after the Civil War. We're talking about 1870s, right? Mm-hmm. This is a fairly modern world at this time, although they're also accusing people of being vampires up in New England at this time as well, too.
And we abolished slavery, yeah. So that's a good thing, at least.
Yeah, that's right. But you would think that we were coming around, right? You would think that we were progressing. We've passed through the age of enlightenment. All this kind of stuff. So, we're right on the border of the 20th century. But it wasn't that case, because in Ireland, this man, his name was Cleary. His wife went missing for about 7 days, and then she comes back. And he says that she was not acting herself, and he believed wholeheartedly that she was not his wife, that she was a changeling. And one of the ways to get rid of a changeling is through fire. So in front of guests at his house, he catches his wife on fire and he kills her. He's brought to trial, and he's found guilty. But his sentence is mitigated because the judge could understand why he was in such intellectual turmoil over this. So he only served like 5 years or something, not very long. And then he moves to the United States, which is great, because if you think about it, then he brings all this kind of stuff to the United States with him. But so as recently as the late 1800s, there was people still believing that changelings was going on, and people were killing people because of this.
Yeah. Oh, man. I don't know if that's a good thing that he brought that type of thing over, though. But
that's right.
I get your point. I get your point.
Yeah, leave that over there, but yeah.
Yeah, leave that over there, but we would love to we take what valuable over here. Yeah. So there's a lot of things that you just said, Ron. So let's see here. Where do I want to go in first and not hopefully confuse the viewer or the listener at this point? First off, again, with the pangolin thing, reminds me of a story Andrew brought up from his book that I don't have. So the one that I got from, what was it, Sir Arthur Dowell, again, for people with his New England Faery. Anyway, he had the story from New York Fairies, as I remember the conversation. It's been a couple of weeks now, so bear with me. Anyway, he was talking about how somewhere in northern New York, there was a story about a pangolin where this time it involved a mother and a baby. But so the mother killed the baby. So, yeah, same thing, though. That's not my baby. That's a fairy. Right. So it's interesting what we would do. The other thing I want to say real quick, because you brought it up again, is, and I should maybe delve into it a little bit more with you, is you brought up food again. Mm-hmm. So like we were saying, let's just say 10 minutes ago about, they're trying to get us to eat their food, therefore we become one. Mm. So in a way, that's like a trickery thing, we could say. Trickster, maybe, for lack of word in here. But I mean, what is their purpose then? Just to make us become one, or basically to get us to swap them because they want to be here, kind of thing?
I think that's a great question, because they can be here if they want to be, right? But what is the reason why? So I think it's a bit of a warning thing. I think what's going on is that if you are not prepared whenever you go out into the world, because, we were basically wild animals for, 300,000 years before we decided that we were going to build walls and, live in houses. And now we have electricity and we've separated ourselves from the world. So, and this was understood, even 2,000 years ago, that the world outside of our town, our village, is foreign to us because we're not hunter gatherers anymore. We can farm, we can live sedentary lifestyles. We don't have to go out into the woods. So a place that was once familiar to us now becomes frightful, and it's filled with lions and tigers and bears. Right? It's a world that we no longer can control, so we leave it behind. Right? We forget about it, but it still haunts us in a way. So we look at like the Epic of Gilgamesh, which was, it's about a 5,000-year-old piece of literature. Whenever Gilgamesh leaves his world behind and enters into the wild world, he encounters all kinds of strange creatures because that's where they live. And they don't really intrude on our world unless you go looking for them. And then once you go looking for them, that's where the conflict takes place, right? And by the late 1500s, we have Shakespeare's A Midsummer Night's Dream, and it takes place in Athens, Greece, and we have these lovers who are perfectly fine where they're at, and then they go out into the wilderness, and now they are in the world of the Faery, where all kind of bad things happen, and that's kind of like our warning sign. That we have to be careful, because when we leave our world behind and enter the other world, the world of where things live that we don't understand, that is the point when we can lose ourselves, right? Because, we are returning to that from which we came. We've evolved out of that. And there's a reminder there that when we're out in the woods of our bestial nature, right? We don't want to return to that. We are people of reason. We're people of sanity, but something about that wild world and becoming feral is something that terrifies us. So I think what happens is when we voluntarily eat or partake of food from the fairy realm, we are deliberately giving ourselves over to the chaos of nature. And in that chaos of nature, we now lose our humanity.
So keeping with the food aspect too, two things that I can think of right now. Now, I don't know what you're talking Ireland. I haven't heard you yet say like the Scottish yet, but so I guess like with Scottish, and I don't know if I brought this up with Andrew, and maybe afterward, I can't remember. Anyway, if I say it again for people that may have listened to Andrew, whatever. Anyway, it's a point. There's a point to this again. So with Ireland, because I know with Scottish lore, there's that legend where this person is lost in the wood, and then this fog comes in, like you were talking about earlier. But then, this group of herd of deer come up, but this one deer walks up to this lady and brings her to this cave. I think they described it, where she can stay there. But the idea or the agreement would be she would have to be there for a year, not just one night. Okay, so you know where I'm talking about then. Okay. So yeah, I guess to make it short then, since Ron knows what I'm talking about, is for people. So there's this old man that is weaving cheese, and he had breaks off a piece and put one piece in the left hand where it's good dream, and then another piece on his right hand where I forget what animal it is on each side. But I know the right hand is nightmares. But anyway, fast forward now, because there is an older lady there, but the gentleman is also staring into an abyss thing, water, I think it was, like a bowl of water or something. And anyway, to the point to this in the short nutshell is after a year, she's able to go, but she ends up marrying this dude, which is almost foreshadowing her being the older lady and the older gentleman that he weaving the cheese thing. Oh my god. So anyway, what I'm trying to get at, I guess, Ron, is there anything similar to like that Scottish lore with Ireland or something, to like these weird dreams, I guess?
Well, sure. I think it's pervasive, actually, if you think about it. So the idea of weaving or creating is very much when we think of like Rumpelstiltskin, right? So he was weaving, and one of the things were in these tells, whether you're looking at, the Brothers Grimm, or we're looking at Nordic tells, or really any kind of old world tells, we are dealing with a magical figure that is able to create something that we need. And in exchange for what that gift that he gives us is usually your child, right? That's usually what happens. And that's what happened in Rumpelstiltskin. And if we think as well, too, of Rapunzel as well, Rapunzel.
Oh, with the hair.
Yeah, with the hair, right. So she is the mother, Rapunzel's mother, what she was pregnant with Rapunzel. They were starving. So they leave their home. The husband leaves his home, and he goes over and he finds a garden of cabbages, and he steals one. Again, the idea of the food, takes it back to his wife, and they eat it. And then the witch comes looking, because that was her garden. And she says, because you stole this food from me, your child will be mine. And then, now this child has magical properties and all this stuff. So that is really prevalent throughout the world of the fairy world. That is some of the key pieces, that you have magic that is unable to be produced by humans, but it's needed by humans. And then they lose something because they have to ask for something that's magical. So yeah, we have that all over the place. And I think, you had said earlier before, fairies definitely are the trickster. And we look at Native American folklore as well, too. We see that. Not so much the fairies, but we do have this idea of the little people. Or up in your area, up around the Bridgewater Triangle, we have the Pukwudgie. In Hawaii, we have a giver of culture through magical beings, which is called the Menehune. So we do have this idea, too, in the New World. It's just that the Old World has such a historical lineage and a literature attached to it, is the reason we always cite those cases. But of course, it's all around the world.
Yeah. It's everywhere. So just to continue on with food, before I want to bring up another thing that you just kind of said, is so first off, I just want to say, is there significance with cheese, with fairies or something?
Yeah, I love cheese, so I'm not sure exactly what that is. No, but no, I have no idea why. No idea.
Is it because, well, I guess I could say this for the joke, but like, when was it? June 3rd or 4th was National Cheese Day. Is it because cheese makes women happy or something? And
oh no, you know what? I've never tried that to make a woman happy, but I'll have to look into it. Yeah,
it worked on my lady. So I mean,
what kind of cheese? You're gonna have to tell me. You're gonna have to tell me what kind of cheese that I use for that.
My lady like Cabot. I think that's how you pronounce it.
All right,
Cabot.
Yeah, I'll have to look into that.
I think it might be a Vermont brand for all I know. I don't really know. So, but I just find it interesting because when I was trying to say like that weaving thing, the guy happened to be weaving cheese, for a good dreams and nightmares. The last thing I want to say for food, I guess, would be, I think it might be native culture. And I'm trying to remember because I just listened to another thing that brought it up again, but there was interesting with the story that they read, but it had something to do with the corn mother or corn something. They called it something else. I know that corn mother, but what was fascinating about this take was they claimed that this being who came out wearing like green and gold or green and yellow, I forget which one. Anyway, what did that act like? Color of corn. Anyway, the fact that he even states like, well, I came from the stars. That's interesting. So anyway, could that be, I don't know, UFOs? Could you come from the stars?
Right.
So
Right.
the other thing that really gets me is for people, if you never heard of the corn mother, oh man. So this is kind of like the idea of what we were talking about earlier, where, if we appreciate Earth, it's going to give us back. If we do harm to the Earth, it's going to take away from us. So in this case, again, long story short, I guess, for the corn mother in a nutshell, I hope it would be, so this being got told that if you kill me and drag my dead body over this land and bury me, but make sure no weeds get on my body for a week, I think it was, like your land will grow corn or something like that. I might have butchered this story, but it sounds right to me. But anyway, so that's what they did, and this, wherever they dragged this body, corn's brought out, and he was able to feed his colony tribe.
Yep. No. So I want to piggyback on the one thing that you said concerning extraterrestrials, because
from the stars,
that's really important here. So before we were a technological society, and before we had computers, and before we were launching satellites and all this other kind of stuff, if you were walking through the woods and you saw a strange light, or you encountered a strange being, what would you think that it was? Because you did not have a part of your vocabulary to talk about extraterrestrials or anything. So the only thing that you could say is you encountered fairies, and that's what happened. Absolutely, you can look at a lot of different writings. Robert Kirk, who was a minister up in Stirlingshire, and I'm trying to think of the town in which he lived in. It's not popping into my mind right now, but he wrote a tremendous book, The Commonwealth of the Fairies. And he was a man of God. He was a reverend, and he believed that fairies were just part of God's creation, right? And he also said the only people that cannot see fairies are atheists. So you have to believe in order to see them. But he encountered his first fairy encounter was walking through the woods, and he sees this mound in the woods, and a door opens up in it, and this light comes out, and he kind of gets up enough bravery, and he looks in, and he sees these kind of Nordic figures that you would talk about in UFO phenomenon. And guess what? He was also abducted, but because they didn't know about extraterrestrials or anything like that, he saw it as a fairy abduction. So I think this idea of abductions and seeing lights in the woods and being taken into other worlds has been with us from the very beginning. But each culture interprets to their own good, right? In whichever particular thing is happening within that culture. So if it would happen now, of course, this is extraterrestrial, right? Because we want to explain away by science. But if we're in the Middle Ages or in the Renaissance, the only sense that we can make of it is it's from the other world. It's got to be something like fairies, and that's what happened.
Yeah, another recommendation that I still need to get my hands on. Maybe after this, I'm just gonna buy my damn copy finally. But it's Jack Foley's Dimensions. I keep getting to ask. I've read that damn book, and I'm like, oh, it's on my wish list. I guess at this point I might as well just do it. So, yeah, but that guy's great stuff anyway, from what I hear. So, I know of him because obviously he's been in Close Encounters of the Third Kind and etc. I mean, that guy's up there in age too, but I mean, that guy knows his stuff. So it's fascinating to think about this as well, because I mean, we could also go back to when you were talking about up in our area per se, like, we have the different, I don't even know what to even call them, different kinds, I guess, kind of like what we could say with Bigfoot, right? Like in the northern south, we could say this about Bigfoot, let's just say for the example, south of us, they seem to be more smaller in size. But as you grow up north, they become bigger, more, I guess you could say, more muscular, more thinner. Like in New Hampshire, we have what they call the wood devil. You know, they look like a Bigfoot, but they are skinnier, or wing. Yeah, I'll just say skinnier for the term that I'm now not getting in my head. But anyway, but their hair, fur. I'll just stick it to hair because at this point all I hear is they got hair. But anyway, it's more lengthier, so that's what sticks out of a wood devil a little bit more. But still, are they considered a Bigfoot, just a different kind? So I guess what I get at here, Ronald, is with fairies here. Have you noticed, maybe even where you are in Pennsylvania, or maybe more, western of us, is eastern area, like the northeast side of the kingdom here, is more malevolent, where fairies are trying to lure us to their doom, versus, like, I don't know, most other continents?
Right. That's a great question. So we are in Appalachia here, right? This is where I live. So in Appalachia, everything is out there to kill you, right? Close your door. Don't look out your window at night. No whistling. If you hear your name called, no, you didn't. All this kind of stuff. So everything around here is taken with a wary eye, right? We don't want to interact with anything out there. And the reason why that is because this area was founded by the Scots-Irish that brought all these beliefs over with them. So we tend not to see the things that go bump in the night as something that we want to interact with, right? So I think that the other areas where you look at, whenever you go farther up to New England, well, even with the Pukwudgie, they were the givers of culture, and they were actually friends with people. And then all of a sudden, there's this war between humans and the Pukwudgie, and now they're on separate kingdoms now, right? So this kind of stuff happens all over the place. But the idea that you brought up about geographical areas, absolutely, they are going to definitely inform the viewer and the witnesser, and even the experiencer, whatever the case may be. It's going to inform them on how they see the world around them. So definitely around here, things are going to be much more malevolent than other places, just because that's our worldview.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in a place where sometimes, we shoot first and ask questions later.
Sure, so that's right. That's right. That's right. Or sometimes shoot and ask no questions.
Yeah. Why did you do that? I don't know.
That's right. That's right. Because he needed a shooting.
Man, that would be an interesting comment to that. You brought up something else real quick, and now I'm trying to remember all of it. I know there don't whistle at night. You don't throw anything at night because it might get thrown back or something.
That's right.
You don't follow your name, and I think there's like one more, but I can't even think right now.
Yeah. There's a whole bunch. And my son did at one time, whenever he was little. This was in a very foggy afternoon when we were out on a hike, and there was something being thrown at him, and he picked it up and he threw it back into the woods, and it threw it back at him again. True story. So,
oh man.
Yeah, I have no idea what that might have been, but that is a frightening commentary on the area in which I live.
That is kind of frightening. Well, since you're around the Appalachia, you know what? Before we wrap things up, Ronald, for today anyway, there's one thing that I'm just curious about. So I don't know. I don't think it's around Pennsylvania. I think it's more towards Kentucky and what's that other one? Arkansas. But they call it the Death Triangle. You ever heard of that?
I have not. Fill me in on this. I don't know about this.
It's a place around the specific Appalachia area where there's just way too much death, I guess. Like, stay away from this area.
You probably take a triangle and put it anywhere, because the area where I am at, This was a place of the French and Indian War, a lot of fights around this area. So we have a lot of deaths just because of the history of Appalachia as well, too. And where I live, we don't have the hollers and all the hills and stuff like that's definitive of West Virginia. But you go into places like that, and before roads were brought in, people were so isolated they actually had their own languages there. I mean, that's how terribly isolated it was. So if you can imagine people living in these isolated areas, and again, these are Scots Irish people coming over, they are not going to learn very much about anything on the outside of their community. So all these folk tales that they brought and all the things that their grandparents are telling them around campfires, that's going to be part of who they are. So the world of the fairy definitely was brought over with them. Now, can you imagine now living in Appalachia and settling in Appalachia and entities that reside in this area, how you deal with them? Of course, you're going to call them fairies because you have no other name. I mean, that's the way they're acting, right? So we have this great influx of old world ideas clashing with new world mentalities, and you come up with something extremely unique, and that is your Appalachian folklore.
Yeah, there's a lot of strange things in Appalachia that.
Oh my goodness, yes.
I don't even know to begin with that, and just everything else. It's just amazing how much old history is there, and
I agreed.
And the density of the woods, I guess I can just say for everything else. But you brought up an interesting point, like, and I guess to finish off, Ronald, for now would be to basically counteract what you said about, the since that's all they knew was to call them fairies, that's all they could call them. Do you believe that maybe nowadays that maybe everything is just one thing, but we're just splitting it off into subcategories?
Yeah, I truly do, and that's where my writing is starting to go off to, like my Lights in the Mist and on fairies, and even on the book, my first book that I wrote, which is The Unexplained World of the Chestnut Ridge. I'm starting to believe that all these different phenomena that we call Bigfoot and Dogman and aliens and all this other kind of stuff can all be encapsulated into the world of the fairy, because it makes sense to me. And if you look at the historical record, we have the idea of shape-shifting entities. Some of them even turn into large birds. So we have the idea of the thunderbird out there as well, too. So as I go down these multiple rabbit holes as a researcher, I'm really coming to the conclusion that we are not dealing with a multitude of different apex predators and all this other phenomenon, but we're dealing with something that is ultra terrestrial, not extraterrestrial, but is of this earth, but of an intelligence and of a vibration and a frequency which is out of our knowledge, and that, for lack of a better word, is the fairy.
Yeah. You'd be liking the conversations that we've been having with that I've been having with some other people, because we all are starting to think that way too. Like it's just one thing, but we're starting to call it something else, because that's how we can do.
Yeah, sometime have a panel discussion on. I would love to sit in on one.
We got one tonight, that's for sure.
Yes. Yeah, unfortunately, I have another project that I'm going to be dealing with here in a matter of minutes, so I won't be able to sit on that one. But next time, my friend, next time.
Yeah, this one's going to be like at 6:00 tonight anyway, but we're going to be talking about our Kenneth Arnold for his UFO incident that happened on June 24th, 1947, because it was actually a couple weeks before Roswell happened, and then we're going to be talking about fairies again. So yeah,
wow.
It's a shame that you probably won't make it for that one, but yeah, it's going to be interesting. That's why I'm saying manifestation now, the air, Ronald. I'm telling you, because apparently everybody was just like, "Oh, it's your turn. It's Paul's turn to decide what we're talking about." I'm like, "Well, okay, well, we got these 2 days coming up. We'll talk about that. So that's what we're gonna do tonight." So. But yeah, it's Ronald. like always, it's always a pleasure. I don't want to take any more of your time as always. But for people watching the video and listening, so once again, check out Ronald on Fairies and Historical Survey. If there's anything, Ronald, real quick, that I have not had a chance to let you talk about, what is exactly we can expect in this book, please let us know real quick of what else can we expect.
Well, it's looking at the world of the fairy from all different cultures across a great time and space. So I think that you'll get a lot of stuff out of it. But you can find it on Amazon, or you can go to ron-cryptoguru.com. Right there it is. And you can find my books there. And you also can get in touch with me through there as well, too. So if you ever want to talk about anything, I'm more than welcome to talk to anybody about the strange and the unusual.
Yeah, for the listeners, just real quick that are not seeing the video, it's www.ron-cryptoguru, so crypto and then guru.com, just for the listeners.
I appreciate that, my friend.
Yeah, of course, man. And I guess, Ronald, what we need to just do one day is with your schedule, right? It'd just be like, all right, I have this day where, I can just sit down with you and talk for hours, but I need a bathroom break in between. But because there's just so many other national holidays coming up that I know you would probably be interested in. And one thing I just want to say is, for a comment that I had received one time, going back to me being, like I was kind of speaking out about my mind, is one person was like, why do you have certain guests coming back on over and over and over and over and over and over again? And I kind of don't have that public because I just don't tolerate that crap. But just to kind of say it here, is without calling you out, but just to kind of prove my point, is Ronald here, who not only just talked about one specific thing, but branches out. Of course, Ronald is going to be back on because she's branching out.
Yeah, I do enjoy my time here with you too, Paul. So, like I said, I'm looking forward to coming back again.
Yeah, and I mean, just for real quick teasers, we got, what's next? We got
sea serpents.
Sea serpents. But before that, we even have World UFO Day in July. We also have something else that I'm probably forgetting. But yeah, sea serpents, and then we got what is it? September we got National Ghost Hunting Day. Ghost Hunting Day. And then in October we got a few, actually, from what I remember, which is like National Flatwood Monster Day, which I've never really fully gone into that. Like, I know of it, but it's like I never really delved into it because it's like a one-time event and it never happened again, of these creatures or whatever you want to call them.
Right.
These Flatwood.
Right. There is a festival there, though, however, and I spoke there last year, and I'm speaking there again this year as well, too.
Yep. And then don't quote me, but it's like October 11th or 12th or something. I can't even remember now. It's called like National Mothman Day. I'm like, where did all these come from?
That's right. Oh,
so we got plenty. So we got plenty to talk about, Ron.
I'm looking forward to it, sir. I'm looking forward to it. And like I said, if I didn't have to run here and go on to another project, I would be here with you for all day. But we'll make time, and we'll talk about other things that creepy and crawly things.
Yeah, for sure. And maybe what we can do is just schedule ahead of time. So like if we need an hour break, we can just, do an hour break, come back on and do it all over again.
We'll make it happen. We'll make it happen.
That's right. And for everybody else, I'll just say it real quick. So here's Ronald's website again, ron-cryptoguru.com, where you can find Ronald, contact him, all his books and everything. He might need to update his website, though. I don't know. There is actually a new book that you did, unless it was like a expanded edition, but it's like a hike into Chestnut Ridge or something.
Yeah, so it's an expanded edition. That's correct. So yeah, you can find two different forms of the Chestnut Ridge on there as well too.
Sweet. And I guess for everybody else, when it comes to books, if you love books, and another site where you can actually support us or whatever is bookshop.org/shop facebook.com/haunted Vermont. I have Ronald books there that I sort of available. Not all his books are showing up, but from that bookshop link is not only are you helping Ronald and whoever else, publisher wise, but whatever book you buy from the bookshop link from me is supporting my local bookstore of choice called the Book Nook, because they are great people and they're a small indie shop, and they treat local authors really good, and that's why I like to support them. Another thing that I need to start doing too, if you like books, is arcadiapublishing.com/haunted Vermont. You can get 20% off your entire order, kind of thing. It's crazy. If you don't want to use the special link, Haunted Vermont is the discount checkout code, and you can get 20% off that way. So it's crazy. And lastly, real quick, for people, if you want to get in contact, is hauntedvermont.org. Otherwise, you got the email address of hauntedvermont802@gmail.com. Whether it's inside of the Green Mountain State or beyond the Green Mountain State, I definitely want to hear you. So I think that's it. Thank goodness. If I missed anything else, Ron can scold me later, I guess.
I think you're good, my
friend.
I think you're good.
Right. Well, for everybody else that you got it this far, I guess go have a cookie or something. But if you like donuts, I guess I'll just say, for the lack of word in here, go get yourself a donut. Until next time, folks, watch the sky, watch the ground, watch the water, which we didn't even get a chance to even talk about that. Maybe that's next time, Ronald. Maybe next year for Faery Day or something. But you just never know what may come out of the water, what experiences you may have, and whatever you do, if you hear your name, do not follow it, because you just might disappear forever.